So the two attributes that we're going to talk about today affirm the divine perfection. These are, when we say al-kamalu lillah, this is a very famous Arabic phrase. It's just a proverb. Perfection is only for God. So when people find themselves getting a little bit too OCD or perfectionist about things, or expectations are so high, it says al-kamalu lillah. That perfection is God's business. It's not ours. So there are two attributes that really hone in on the notion of God's perfection and how we look at it. And so when these two attributes, Qudus and Salam, they're kind of like two sides of one coin, right? And they're both affirming the interesting point that, for example, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, right? So there is nothing that is like him in any way, and at the same time, he hears and sees. So the way we're supposed to deal with this is, his hearing and sight is not requiring an ear or an eye, and it has absolutely no limits, and it's seeing everything in its fullest, absolute, detailed reality. You see what I'm saying? So never try to embody or anthropomorphize God in some sort of physical, worldly way, right? There's nothing like him. But at the same time, he hears and sees everything in its absolute reality to the very speck of detail, what we call quantum, mechanics here, right? And then وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, or كُفْءًا أَحَدٌ, or كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. All three of those are valid ways to say it. So there is absolutely nothing that could be seen as anywhere near his level. Nothing comparable to him. So the kuf in Arabic, so when you're looking for a spouse, the scholar said, you need to look for al-kuf. You need to look like, okay, someone who you can relate to, similar age to a reasonable extent, similar kind of cultural, definitely you need to have religious commitment, similar, all of that kind of thing. They're saying, we're looking for people, probably ideal not to have someone super wealthy background and someone who grew up in a very poverty. Like if you have all, you need to try to find ways that they can match as much as possible. Not the same, but just try to make sure that there's a good overlap and match. This is what the scholar says. So kufa, that they're bringing them together in a way they can relate. So there's nothing in existence that could be compared or seen as anywhere near the level of God. Now many people who doubt God, they don't understand the nature of life as it relates to God. So you've all heard the thing. If there is a good God who's all loving and merciful, then why does he allow bad things to happen and pain and suffering and all of this? What is this? These people are demanding that if there's a God, then he must only make a Jannah for everyone to live in, and there shall be no test. Right? It's like, who are you? You don't even believe in God. And then you're telling, if there was a God, how he should be. What do we call this thought process or behavior? This is arrogance, right? Because there's someone who doesn't even believe in something, and the way they choose to disbelieve in it is they pick some things about it and they say, well, if that thing is this way, it should be this way in order to be the right way, right? According to who? According to me. That's the way I feel about things. And who are you? If we go up into an airplane, you look like a little ant. If you go up any further, I can't see you. You're a speck of dust, man. Stop acting like you are the holder of the absolute knowledge of everything, okay? And so which is a divine quality, right? Omniscience, we've been through it. The one who believes that their knowledge is absolute and what they think should be seen as the supreme truth, that is a divine quality of omniscience, absolute knowledge. Their knowledge is supreme. If it doesn't fit in their knowledge, then it can't be true, right? So these people, they're kind of creating a world that they want to be in order for there to be a God. But what we understand actually from each religion, with all their differences in defining God as well as salvation, they all have the notion that this is a realm created to be a place where there is flaws and shortcomings and weaknesses and hardships and pain and work and toil, and all of that is part of a test for a person who has an individual moral consciousness to prove themselves that they are worthy of God. That they have to prove themselves to be an independent conscious being other than God, which animals and plants and stars and mountains and fish and everything, all of that exist, those things are not conscious moral beings. They are naturally just doing whatever their impulse tells them. None of them are thinking like, I'm Joe, the fish, and let me go figure out what life is all about. It's like, oh no, too bad that shark just ate my friend. Look at the pain and suffering he went through. Like, no being other than us thinks in any sort of moral conscious way. Self-awareness, right? So if there's going to be a being that will have the autonomy and the freedom and the consciousness to have their own existence, then the one who creates, the one who has absolute control and knowledge and the ability to decide worthiness, then that separate being would need to prove by their own free will that I am committed to the one that gave me my existence in the first place. That I am recognizing that to be in a place of perfection, I have to earn it. You see what I'm saying? And that's pretty much all religion says that. So all religious people and all religious communities have always had this notion of what we're doing here and why it's like that. And so we're all in agreement about that's the nature of things. Then people who don't want to believe in religion came and said, well, God should have just created everything perfect and then made everybody in a perfect place. Let me ask you, would you enjoy perfection if you've never faced pain and suffering and difficulty? Would you even know what that is? Would you even know what enjoy? A lot of spoiled rich people get very depressed. You know that, right? And they end up on drugs, right? But why should they end up on drugs? They have all the money in the world. They can do whatever they want with it, right? Because it's like, what is, like, they've never known what it's like to not have a meal or to go through pain because healthcare was like absolute and perfect and immediate for them, right? And so that's where understanding perfection and our place in imperfection and how we yearn and long for perfection by seeking it out is actually the purpose of life. So, القدوس literally means purity, meaning affirming a blessed state of highness, holiness, right? So, when we say holy in English, they say related to the divine, spiritual, blessed, and sacred. So this is very much mirroring what we understand about Al-Qudus, the holy, absolute perfection of holiness. So it is important to understand that God introduces himself to us with qualities that we often recognize in creation, which is obviously, creation is not perfect. Creation goes through fluctuation. Creation goes through different phases. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's flawed, sometimes it withers away, and all of that. So we're prone to belittle God. When we see that God has these qualities, he introduces himself with certain things, so we start to try to relate him to other things. So for example, God is Al-Qahhar, right? You know what Al-Qahhar is? Is the dominator, the one who dominates, right? He's also Al-Mumit. He causes death. Do we usually relate those to good things as us, like the way we think? Say, this one dominates everything else, right? I guess nowadays they're brainwashing us to believe, like in sports terms, like he dominated them, So, but usually we don't see that as a good thing, right? Everybody needs a chance. Like everybody should be given a fair shot here, right? Right? And so Mumit's like, no, he's causing death, man. That's murder, right? So but the way he dominates and the why and what death is all about and its purpose and how it brings value and the intent of its execution all has very good qualities to it. So God, in all of his elements, in all of God's attributes, not elements, he is absolutely pure and holy and lofty in who he is. Now, this was the confusion of the angels, right? So the angels, when they hear that God, and they're just trying to understand. So God is saying, this human being I have chosen above all of the creations on this earth, and I will honor this human being as my special agent and deputy to the world. So we're like, but there was yasfikuna dima, they're going to shed blood and cause corruption and all of that. Like the stronger opinion is that they know, they have been given knowledge of decree that human beings will do a lot of bad things. وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. But what about, we are glorifying your perfection and holding you as sacred and holy, and we would never ever do anything other than that. We're just telling you, why this one, right? Why would you do that, right? And then he introduces them the point of what? Exactly. I have knowledge that you don't have. And then the knowledge that he gave the human being turned out to be the point of value here. That knowledge will help you get over your shortcomings. Knowledge is growth. So this was that's why he goes into. He's justifying why when he says وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, and he says أَنْبِئْهُمْ بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ. He's showing them that they don't have any ability to say or know anything outside of what God tells them. Whereas Adam has this sophisticated ability to intellectualize things on his own. He can come up with and bring a sophisticated expression about what things are and how they are and why they are. You see what I'm saying? Whereas the angel cannot do that. And that is a very, don't misunderstand me, but that's like a divine trait. Like God is the creator, right? Angels just do whatever they're told and they do it. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever you look in this room we're in, look at any other being that builds a room like this and talks on a microphone and looks at a screen like that. You see what I'm saying? We were given a special connection to the divine sense of being, a special access to amazing capacity. Now the test is, how will you use it? Will you go Oppenheimer and build the atomic bomb, right? And incinerate 70,000 innocent people because you want to show your dominance and your understanding of qahar, right? Or will you be the one who will come up with a new surgical procedure or a new medicine that will solve all of the problems or whatever? Or will you come up with a means to gaining energy that will save the world from problems and save everybody a bunch of money and all of that? You see what I'm saying? So the question is, what will you do with your knowledge? And that's when we look at the caliphate, is that they tried to affirm the best qualities within the Islamic civilization through knowing God in His lofty holiness and how to use this knowledge to become creative, to do things in ways that are beneficial. And so that's the holiness. Imam al-Ghazali, he described this attribute. He said it's the unique perfection above human realization, thought, or imagination. And so going back to our point, so why he says al-Malik al-Quddus, he puts it both times, al-Malik al-Quddus, twice. The only two places al-Quddus comes is after al-Malik, meaning what? To describe al-Malik. Meaning he is the king with all of the most beautiful, absolutely sacred, blessed, good traits possible. Not any flawed, no good traits. That's why he says Assalam after. We'll get to that shortly in a moment. So his blessedness affirms his perfection and sanctity and lofty, unique beauty in all his descriptions and actions. Okay? So Assalam is the attribute that is negating all weaknesses, flaws, defects, shortcomings, mistakes. Right? So Assalam is saying he has perfection, but not in the affirmation of all the good, but in the affirmation, in the negation, I'm correctly saying here, of any flaws, weaknesses, shortcomings, or defects. We say that if we say salam, it means there's no conflict, there's no problems, there's a good situation between people because they don't have problems. That's salam. It's an absence of conflict. You see what I'm saying? Salim, if we say, so if somebody asks you about that thing, what about that thing? Is it broken or so? Salim, right? That thing's good. So, lahu salama. It doesn't have any problems. There's no defects. لَيْسَ لَهُ عُيُوبٍ in Arabic. هذا سين لام ميم khali min al-uyub. Something free of flaws and defects, void of shortcomings, weaknesses, and all of that. So God's perfect in His holiness. So as it relates to Him being omniscient, now we're talking about how He relates, how all of His divine attributes are related. So in His being al-Qudus, so His omniscience, His knowledge is absolutely the top of peak of excellence, and His knowledge has all good to it. But His being Assalam, His being the perfection of flawlessness, as it relates to His omniscience, it means He doesn't have one iota of ignorance. There is no ignorance in Him. Now you're getting the difference between and how they go together? Is it clear to you? So there are many profound meanings of the flawlessness of Allah Azza wa Jal. So for example, إِذَا خَاطَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When ignorant or foolish people talk to a true believer, a person who is a servant of the merciful, قَالُوا سَلَامًا. So the way the scholars interpret it, it didn't say قَالُوا salam, salamun, They didn't say actually peace, right? What it is they said a word, this is the hal, right? Salama. That they said something that makes sure that they don't join the ignorance and foolishness that's being brought to them, right? They're making sure that the flaws and weaknesses and the defects of this person coming to them does not bring flaws and weaknesses and defects to them. You see what I'm saying? So that's the meaning of that one. يَهْدِي بِهِ اللَّهُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ رِضْوَانَ سُبُلَ السَّلَامِ. So the Quran and the light of guidance, that it is guiding people for whoever would be following or seeking out God's pleasure. Subul as-salam. It brings many ways to remove from you flaws and weaknesses and shortcomings. That's what it's saying here. It's that the Quran, it gives you so many different pathways and means to remove your flaws and weaknesses and shortcomings, so that when you die, you are worthy of Darus Salam. You see what I'm saying? So now you can go into the land of true peace, meaning the land where there is no pain, no suffering. Back to our original point. You with me now? No pain, no suffering, no weaknesses, no flaws, no job, no work, no getting old, no getting sick. All of that doesn't exist in heaven. But you have now earned your way there because you followed a pathway in life affirming the holiness of God and all of His perfection by removing from yourself all of the flaws that are surrounding you and filling you in this world in so many different ways. So it's a process of purification through knowing the perfection of God that you are going to get there. دعواهم فيها سبحانك الله. When you say subhanallah, what you're doing is you're affirming His being as-salam. Because as-salam huwa ta'zimullah, it's basically you're glorifying God and exalting God by saying there's nothing wrong with God. Tasbih, there's absolutely no flaws. His perfection is glorified above all. Right? That's tasbih. So subhanaka Allahumma wa tahiyyatuhum fiha salam. Because they came into heaven through affirming God's perfection and His flawlessness, now then they are greeted. Here is the perfection you were looking for. Here is what you lived your life focusing on, purifying yourself. Now you've got it. You've earned your place here, right? And so hopefully you left those atheistic ideas. So now the thing that you were hoping you would have got on the default setting, now you realize it's something that you were working for, and that's why you were created in the first place, right? So, Salamun alaykum bima sabartum fa ni'ma uqba ad-dar. So then what they tell you, the angels are telling you, now you will have that absolute perfection. You will have the freedom from any flaws, from any hardships, from any weaknesses. This is where you'll have that. This is bima sabartum. What is sabr? Sabr is to control yourself in the face of flaws and defects and hardship and work. You're realizing that you're not in a place of perfection. So patience and perseverance is in dealing with it in a way, understanding reality as it is, and preparing for the reality where it will no longer be. You see what I'm saying? That's what patience is. is in recognizing you're not in the actual presence physically and intimately of Al-Qudus, Assalam. You are wanting to get there to him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why he says, وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَى مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الْهُدَى. You see what I'm saying? So if you follow the guidance, then that will free you of the flaws. And who is this? Is actually Moses talking to Pharaoh. You see? It's because Pharaoh is believing that he is some divine entity, which is nonsense, but he's believing that, and that's what will be his demise, is believing that he is some perfect being when he's not. And so he needs to embrace the fact that he is flawed, and that he needs to seek out the perfect being, and that the one who is sent to him is showing him signs that he is able to overcome the things that no other human being can do, which is why those magicians immediately submitted when they saw that this is not magic. This isn't some trick of the eyes or something like this, or something that we've learned. This is actually the creator of the universe who has the power to make things the way they are. So when we say Assalamu alaikum, what are we doing? We're indicating that I wish for there to be no problems or trouble with you, and I'd like to be someone who brings good to you in your life. I want to make sure that my presence to you, it relieves you of any hardship or difficulty or problems. That's what you're saying. Assalamu alaikum. That's why it's very important for us. We know we're in trouble when we're asking a child, I will say a child 8 years old, but if we're asking a 15, 16-year-old Muslim person, raised Muslim, say, what does Assalamu alaikum mean? They'd be like, it's like hi, it's like the Arabic hi. No! Hi is simply a recognition of your existence. Hi. I see you. That's really what hi means. That's the complexity of it. Assalamu alaikum is a beautiful prayer and supplication and goodwill to the fullest extent. Like it's something very profound and beautiful. That's where now, like, a lot of our teenagers, they meet each other and like, what's up, dude? You know what I'm saying? Like, why? You don't see the beauty in this, Assalamu alaikum? You don't see that that is a profound truth? That's something, because what we're doing is we're reminding each other what we want for each other, knowing that we can't have the fullness of it here, that we're going to have it there. And so we're trying to cultivate the constant reminder every time we see each other of the will to go to heaven, of the will to be in the place of perfection in its presence. Because that's not here. There is no perfection in this place that we're living in. We're looking to go there when we die. And so one of the most common remembrances, actually, Ayahs said, that she heard the Prophet ﷺ making this prayer often in ruku' and sujood. Like, I'm going to reaffirm this for you. And I'm just going to be very, very clear again. Okay. Whoever is thinking in their mind, ruku' is a place where you say, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. And sujood is a place where you say, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. That is a very narrow understanding, neglecting a lot of Sunnah. Right? That is a very culturalized understanding of the religion. Actually, there are dozens of authentic hadith. So the Prophet ﷺ said various other things, and he told everybody to pray from their heart while in prostration as the single most important thing you could do, as the best place you could ever do it. And yet there are many people who just go, I can sometimes really, I cringe. My prayer gets hurt. Somebody behind me out here, what is this? What is this? I don't know what it is, but it's not a spiritual commitment of meaning and purpose of prayer from the heart. It's like just something I'm saying fast to try to get good deeds by saying this thing that doesn't even sound coherent, right? Much less is it Arabic, okay? So it's important for us to see Subuhun Quddusun Rabbul Malaikati war Ruh. This is one of the most common things. So there's one statement where the Prophet ﷺ was highlighting some ayahs in the Quran, and he was saying, this is something you could say in ruku', and that's something to say in sujood. He wasn't saying, this is the official decree of what all Muslims until the end of time will say every single time. That's not what he was saying or doing, by the way. But that's just because when we're kids, we're taught the most simple introductory way to say something in ruku' and sujood, and then it becomes like, oh, that's what we're supposed to say. Nobody ever graduates to a deeper spirituality in their salah. And so Subuhun Quddusun Rabbul Malaikati war Ruh. This is one of the most common and accentuated phrases of glorification that the Prophet would make while in ruku' and sujood. And so, subuhun, that you are glorified above all flaws and weaknesses and shortcomings. Qudusun, you are the one affirmed in all of the holy sacred beauty of perfection. Rabbul malaikati wal ruh, you are the Lord of all angels and the soul, the spirit. Is that meaning the spirit like the soul of us, or is that like a short of the angel Gabriel being Ruh al-Qudus, right? He is that, so when we say, going back to, I think maybe we skipped over some ayahs, that Ruh al-Qudus is the Holy Spirit, meaning what? He comes to bring the presence of all of those beautiful lofty traits that you long and yearn for as a believer, and shows you the best qualities through guidance and revelation that you should aspire to. Right? That's what his job is. That's why he is Ruh al-Qudus. Al-Ard al-Muqaddasa, the place where prophets came to affirm the beauty and the holiness of the perfection of God. Right? So that's what that is referring to. So when you leave the salah, you see, so glorifying God and sanctifying His perfection, these are crucial elements of being a believer, and the remembrance of God is to constantly affirm His perfection. So when you leave the salah, you are in a very intimate, as the Prophet ﷺ said, he says, "Inna al-mar'u fi salati innama yunaji rabbah." A person in salah is having an intimate conversation with their Lord, right? And I'm sure he wants more than subs. Okay, I'm not giving up on this because I feel like our problem is a spiritual problem. I think we got into some routines that don't cultivate spirituality, and so we lost that connection with the point of having an organic meaning in our salah. And so then we've had this very profound, very focused prayer in which we were connecting with the perfection of Allah Azza wa Jal. So now we leave that, and the first thing he did was to say, Astaghfirullah. Right? Why? Because now I'm going back to this world and there's all kinds of terrible things going on, and there's all kinds of fitna and trials and sins and problems. So I'm going to affirm what I need to be thinking about throughout my dealings in this world, which is I seek your forgiveness. Because sin is all around us. It pops in our minds, in our faces, and in our thoughts all the time. So this is Allahumma anta salam. It's well known that these are the two first things he said when he left salah. Allahumma anta salam. وَمِنْكَ السَّلَامُ تَبَارَكْتَ يَا ذَا الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. You are the perfection, flawlessness. And if I'm going to reach my full potential and wholeness, if I'm going to reach a place in your pleasure where I have perfection, it's going to come from you and you alone. You are this magnificent, illustrious splendor that gives honor and nobility and greatness to others. So a key component of living with these qualities is exalting and purifying sacred symbols. وَمَن يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. Things that are important to the divine, things that are holy and sacred, things that give you the means to be freed of the flaws and shortcomings, those need to be held high. Those symbols, those things need to be very important. That's where, like, I remember when we were in Florida and we came back, and I was starting my job as an Imam. And man, Ramadan was a big deal because, like we've been living with Ramadan in the Muslim world for like 7 years. And so it's like, what is missing here? And so I realized, we need to do a lot. Like our house, our, community needs to be a little bit more emphasizing the importance in so many ways, So like, how do we do that? I think really the purpose of life for us is that we're working hard to improve ourselves, to affirm all of the most beautiful, lofty qualities of the guidance, the holiness of divine guidance and a divine message of actual divine speech. We affirm that, and then in the process we are removing and alleviating ourselves of the flaws and the weaknesses and shortcomings. And that's where all that matters is not يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالُ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. As long as our hearts, that we're constantly reviewing and vigilant about what's in our hearts. It's very easy to have your religion here. It's easy to be like, okay, that's what you say, that's what I'm going to do, this is the thing, check box, okay, in this situation I probably should say that, I'm around Muslims, I say that, oh, I'm around these people, so I'm going to say this and fit in with them. But if you're always worrying about here, there was certain persistence and certain perseverance and constance in the remembrance of God that will affirm in us the place in perfection. So may Allah make our hearts pure and sound and safe and secure, that when we die, that we have the single most important treasure, that we bring ourselves as souls back to our Creator, having done the best we could possibly do to seek His perfection and to try to embody what He has called us to.